Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you enjoy a nice lunch. We had a very good discussion in the morning. Look at the general picture, energy investments in general. Then we look at three different important regions, such as Japan, a bit beyond Asia, United States, and Europe. And His Excellency, Mr. Yildiz, gave a perspective of Turkey and maybe beyond that. And then we had a discussion on the oil investments and the challenges. We had several international oil companies working on this issue and gave us their insights. Now, electricity, a big part of the investment issue. About half of the all energy investments go to electricity, building power plants, transmission and distribution lines, and we also produce a lot of fuel in order to produce electricity. But there are serious challenges. Now, in this very panel, which is a very, very strong lineup, I am sure you would agree with me, we will discuss the electricity investments and the challenges in front of the electricity sector from different angles. What I would like to do is I would like to go through this side, my colleagues, give them 4, maximum 5 minutes of their statements, in general statements, and follow up with some unexpected questions, so surprise questions to them. So let me start with Mr. Mestrallet, who is the CEO of GDF Suez. How do you see, Gerard, the electricity markets in Europe? Are we okay? Do we have problems or not problems, or everything is under control? How do you see it in your very nice place in Paris?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Fatih. First of all, I would like to say it's working normally. Do you hear me?
Okay, perfect.
And I would like to congratulate Gyula Sabanci for this fascinating conference. Well, Fatih, to answer your question in one word, I would say that things are going wrong in the electricity market in Europe, and I will be very straight because I have only 5 minutes. But there are some hopes of improvement. First, the situation is very bad in Europe because you know, every European energy policy is looking for trying to reach three goals, 3 objectives. First one is competitiveness for the prices. The second is the climate, trying to contribute to climate, to work against climate change. And thirdly, security of supply. And finally, we can say that the result is a triple failure. It is a failure in terms of competitiveness, because the prices of electricity are rising in Europe when they are declining in the States. By the way, there is a kind of paradox. The wholesale prices of electricity in Western markets in Europe have been divided by 2 for the producers like us, when they have never been so high for the consumers. And the reason is that between the 2, you have to add to the price of the electron the cost of the network, the grids, taxes, which have jumped in Europe, and the cost of renewables, which has exploded. So the first element is a failure. Secondly, in terms of climate change, there is a situation where, because of the shale gas in the US, the shale gas has been able in US markets to provide the market with a cheap and abundant gas. Therefore, to produce power in the States, gas is eliminating coal. And that's good for us. We have 15 gigawatts in the States with the gas-fired power plants. Nevertheless, the coal eliminated in the US is exported at cheap prices in Europe. And in Europe, the coal is cheap, but the gas is expensive. And therefore, in Europe, the coal is eliminating the gas. And this is not good for climate, to fight against climate, because for the same capacity, power capacity, coal is producing 2 times more CO2 than gas. And therefore, in some European countries and in energy, because of that, the first consequence is that the CO2 emissions are rising again, and they are only tempered by the low economic growth of Europe. Since coal is eliminating gas, we as a power producer having natural gas-fired power plants, we are obliged to close down enormous quantities of gas plants. When I say enormous quantities, with the group that Johannes Thijssen and myself have regrouped of, let's say, 12 utilities in Europe, we have closed down more than 50 gigawatts of gas plants, which is more or less the equivalent in power capacity of 50 nuclear plants. And therefore, this leads me to the third conclusion in terms of security of supply. You said that this morning, Fatih, in your speech, that Europe has never been so close to a blackout. And in spite of overcapacities, all the 140 gigawatts of renewables built in Europe has brought to overcapacity, which is one of the reasons of the declining prices, wholesale prices. But those capacities are intermittent. You produce electricity only if there is wind and sun. So you cannot use and count on the renewables to supply the consumers for the peak hours. So you have to count, on the contrary, on gas plants, because they are the ideal backup for renewables. In fact, renewables and gas are complementary. When there is no sun and no wind, you switch on the gas power plants, which are very flexible. But today, for economic reasons, we are closing most of the gas plants, even brand new combined cycle CCGTs. By the way, this is a fantastic industrial waste to close down those plants. So there is, therefore, a risk of blackout, because during a winter, when there is a very cold winter with an anticyclone with no wind, and during the night there is usually no sun, so the risk that we will not be able to use the gas backup is such that the risk of a blackout has never been so high for me.
Excellent. So it means the blackout is the name of the game, I would say, or the risk of blackout is the name of the game in the European electricity sector. Gerard, you also mentioned in the beginning there are some hopes. You didn't go to the hopes, but perhaps in the second round, I would be very happy to ask you what are the hopes. It will be a short speech, I guess, that one. But I'm sure I would like to hear about it as well. Now, from Europe, let me go to a bit of a global picture. We have Mr. Kerza, who is the president and the CEO of Siemens. Siemens is a global provider of technology. Where do you see, Mr. Kerza, where are the technologies you expect to have more chances than the others to penetrate the markets, to be more profitable, and to increase their market shares in the power sector?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for being here today. Gyula Sabanci, thank you for the invitation. It's my first appearance here as the first server of Siemens in the company. Being asked about what the opportunities are for a company like us in energy, I can answer that with one single word, and that's great. It is just great, because we are not in here for the moment. We are here for a lasting period of time. And if we go to a lasting period of time, we do know that in the next 18 years, from 2013 to maybe up 2030, the demand on energy will double in this world. It will be twice as much as we have today. And that's a great opportunity, to participate in that area. So where are the short-term opportunities? There definitely are in gas. There are in gas. And if we talk gas, we talk the United States of America. Whether we like it or not, we like it a lot. In the US, there are all the conditions and the opportunities for a great gas development. That's not only about the fracking and the transport, but that's also about getting power out of high-efficiency gas turbines. So that's the single biggest, most attractive market in the short term, and so it will be in the long term. Asia is always good because this is where the most people are in the world. And if you talk energy, we talk about society. If you talk energy, we talk about the beginning of the development of a society. Because if a society starts existing, first thing they need is energy. Because it gets pretty dark at night if there is no power. So that's where everything starts, and that's why we also believe that economies which are big in terms of population, like Turkey, like India, like China, Indonesia, and the likes, they are going to offer the single biggest opportunities in the mid and long term in Asia. So the question is, what happens to Europe? It's a very good question. Do we have answers? Well, so far, maybe not the best ones. When we discuss the global scheme of things, the US is pretty much self-serving and has the potential to do more. Second is Middle East will remain a complicated area, one way or the other, and time will tell on how the self-sufficiency of the United States will impact that region. It's a big question mark. And then that leaves us with Europe and Russia and a lack of a comprehensive strategy in Europe about energy. And when the President of the United States of America said that Russia will pay the price, I'm not sure who will pay the price on the Ukrainian crisis. Maybe, after all, it's going to be Europe. So I think it's very important from the political scheme that Europe gets its act together of a European energy policy. What does that have to do with Siemens? Well, look, two things, and that are very important in the market. First, we need to see where demand happens, because this is where we need to put our resources to work. And demand happens in the United States, happens in Asia, but does not happen in Europe. In the United States, there's going to be more gas turbines sold next year than in Europe the next 13 years. So that's why we need to put our resources to work where demand happens, and that's why we have decided to have our board member responsible for power generation, oil and gas, to work out of Houston, Texas, for the global responsibility. Second, and that's something which often is overlooked, a company, a supplier, can only be as innovative as its customers are. That's like in school or in a university. Students can only learn what their teachers know, not more. So that's why, we need to go and be where our innovative customers are. It would have been impossible for Siemens to generate the world's most efficient gas turbine, with a 580, 590 megawatt performance on 61% performance, if we had not had E.ON as our innovative customer to help us challenge us to the limits. So that's why we also need to see where does innovation happen and where do we need to be. So to summarize it, it's a good place to be. We need to go where demand happens, and we need to make sure, as global companies, and as companies who have local responsibility for our people, that we push our governments to make meaningful long-term decisions on energy. Because all those companies have much more to lose than an election. And with that, I give it back to
Thank you very much. Now, one thing to clarify, it's a very impressive number you gave. So, number of gas turbines sold in the US is equal to the 30 years of Europe. Is it of Siemens or all the turbines?
It's market.
Market, not only Siemens.
It's market.
It is really very impressive for either impressive for US or for Europe. I don't know, but or for both of them.
Well, that just says that Europe still has opportunities.
Yes. Now, this gives a very good pass to the next one. Johannes, E.ON is also one of the leading utilities in Europe. Do you agree with these concerns about the European electricity markets, or are we exaggerating a bit?
No, you're not, but I get depressed if I add on to that. So I think I let it stand where Gerard described it, and I share that, and also Joe pretty much played the same mantra. And I think you worked on failed regulation, which I share, and I think Joe looked into opportunities on the technology side. In the end, you changed the direction a bit, and I think that is an important one that I think that we missed out a bit through the day in a great conference here. But one word happened the first time, the last 2 minutes, that was the word customer. And you, Fatih, in the morning said the power shifts from private companies to government. I'm not 100% certain if they can hold on to that power, or if power will not fundamentally and finally change into the hand of consumers. Because based on some very fundamental shifts in our industry, consumers will grasp the opportunity to control the equation much more than people were used to. It is, first of all, it's a change in environmental concern. People want to decide on what they pollute and what they do and what they think, and they resist the control of utilities, and they also resist the control of governments. The second is technology is getting simpler, smaller, and thus more applicable to smaller solutions or more customized solutions. And I think social media make people quite educated, or give them access to knowledge that they, from our case in the past, happily didn't have. Now they have it, and they will not give it up again. So I think for utilities, it's now a very difficult choice. On the one hand, Joe, from Siemens' perspective, is right. It's a $2 trillion investment case, and if I were Siemens, I could care less if it's private companies or consumers or governments who invested. As long as $2 trillion get invested, I just get ready to be the supplier of that and not the owner for. And power consumption definitely will also grow. But I think then, if you match that with some of the other stories, that the space for the private utility is getting smaller, costs of capital are going up, and risk in the whole equation is significantly going up, because if you look on a hydro power station, you have return times easily 30, 40 years before you see the happy end. And if PV with battery make it within these 30, 40 years, similar to nuclear, would I trust that the government sticks to its promise it did 8 election periods ago? I would not 100% certain in no country. And therefore the risk is significant, and thus I think utilities, probably all of them are looking now, need to find a more solid space to harvest from. The broad utilities of the past, I think, will disappear, and you will see much more specialized entities, and obviously a lot of them will look for shorter bets, smaller and shorter bets, and customer-embedded solutions, because there the likelihood of enjoying the return is significantly higher than if you rely on just a government promise. Because a customer, if you serve him well, if he also enjoys the advantage of an installation, might have a tendency of being much more solid. I think Mr. Gerard is doing things along the line, and I think that might be a very important thing. Now, if we look on Turkey, without thinking to advise, I think Turkey has taken some very solid, good decisions. copying the United States on energy policy, saying, you know, all of the above, not focusing on just one technology or one direction, but going into multiple directions, I think is solid. Also, at least fundamentally, regulation has been consistent, which is good for cost of capital and risk, and obviously needs to continue. I think one learning from Europe would be cautious on subsidies, on any subsidies, renewables as well as fossil subsidies. Whenever you interfere in a market, you get funny results and capital gets misdeployed. So cross-subsidies between customer groups, subsidies within commodities lead not to perfect results, and thus I think there is still something to look into. And then again, enable and involve the customer. Don't forget, don't think that government can, you know, design the perfect course over the next 30 years. Involve society, involve customers, and then within the other framework, which is positive, I think this is a good investment space, and therefore likely a solid conference to continue for a few more years.
Okay, thanks a lot, Johannes. Now, after hearing these presentations, Melanie, about Europe, I am sure that you are happy to be based in the United States. So this is because the situation is completely different in the United States. But can you tell us a bit? We here in Europe, in the US, the recent decision of Mr. Obama about the carbon limits of the electricity generation. Can you tell us a bit on this, and what do you think, what kind of implications it could have?
Actually, it was the Environmental Protection Agency recently released, last Monday, actually,
yes.
Released a draft rule to regulate carbon from power generation. It is, the modeling would show that when fully implemented by the states, the rule would result in a 30% reduction of CO2 from our power sector, which is an enormous, enormous reduction. One of the largest we've seen in the U.S. The other large reduction we've seen in CO2 emissions is from switching from coal to gas generation, which has already occurred. The U.S., I think for a couple years now, has reduced its CO2 emissions more than any country in the world, and that is, half of that is because of reduced demand. The other half is because we've switched from coal to gas power generation. That rule will be implemented over time. The states have a lot of flexibility in developing the plans that they will implement in order to comply with the requirements of the rule. And we've had these Clean Air Act regulations before. Our electric system has always performed reliably in previous instances. It actually spurs a lot of innovation, the regulation does, and this is, as I said, it's implemented over time, so there is an opportunity to do a lot of things and comply with it in a lot of ways. So we are looking forward to working with EPA and the states on the implementation of the rule, and also looking forward to reducing our CO2 emissions. Well, I would like to say something else about, somebody mentioned Europe needs a comprehensive energy plan. And in January of this year, President Obama directed the agencies to do a quadrennial energy review. And it is an effort that is run out of the White House, but my office is doing the analysis, analytical work for that. And the quadrennial energy review that we are doing this year will focus on TS&D infrastructure. And that's not just transmission and distribution for electricity, but we're also looking at primarily natural gas infrastructure and oil and petroleum, liquid fuels infrastructure. And as part of that, we will be taking a close look and doing analytical work on the power system. And what we are seeing in the United States is either flat or declining demand for electricity. And that is really upsetting to utility business models. And so we're going to be doing a lot of analytical work, looking at what is happening to utility business models, seeing what recommendations we might make. One of the things we're looking at is gas-electric interdependencies. As we use a lot more gas and power generation, those infrastructures are becoming more interdependent. That's one big issue. But another thing we're looking at is distributed generation. What you're seeing in the U.S., because of the large reduction in costs in photovoltaics, a lot of solar panels going on roofs, and a lot of disputes between individual customers and utilities about how to pay for the baseload power that those customers are still receiving and how to value the electricity that they are putting into the grid. And so that is a major change in the U.S. And we are also looking at the vulnerabilities of our electric infrastructures. We've had a couple of sophisticated attacks on substations in the United States. It wasn't a couple of young men out joyriding, shooting up a power station, a substation. It was a very sophisticated and planned attack. It was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, so I can talk about it. And but it raises a lot of issues about physical security and vulnerabilities of our grid, and the need for a serious review of our transformer supply chains, for example. And so we are doing this broad analysis of our TS&D infrastructures this year. Next year, we will look at supply and end-use infrastructures. Third year, I hope to look at supply chains. The White House makes the determination, but I think looking at energy supply chains would be a very different way to analyze energy and our energy needs and our energy partnerships. When you start looking at global supply chains, I think we're going to be very interested at what we find. And then the fourth year, do a wrap-up, hence quadrennial, and so there will be a lot of work on electricity in that as well.
Thanks a lot. And perhaps colleagues from Europe may want to think in their next interventions whether or not Europe could also, something like the United States, have a serious review of the energy infrastructure in Europe, asset by asset, and what are their lifetimes and what are the resilience of the infrastructure we have in Europe. They may want to refer to that. Now I move to Dr. Steinmann, who has an overview of the Swiss energy sector, but is a member of the IEA governing board. Dr. Steinmann, you can tell us Swiss case a bit, who is not, of course, a member of EU, but works very closely with EU, and you have an overview of the European policies as well. What is your take about the European electricity sector?
Okay, the European electricity sector is very well connected with our Swiss electricity sector. We are looking for Europe, what is going on, and we've seen different movements. First of all, it's clear Europe is economically in a bad situation. Demand is higher than supply. That means we have low prices. Second, we have the targets 20-20-20. That means all European states have till 2020 20% more energy efficiency. That means also no more demand. The third thing is, for us it's clear, in Switzerland you have to pay for CO2 emissions about 50 to 60 euros. In Europe you can have not 10% of that. That means it's not really well-priced CO2 emissions. And then on the other side, it's like we from the economic sector say, it's a peak circle. That means 10 years ago, all of our Swiss electricity companies invested, like the German one in Italy, to produce electricity there. And for that, we have a big supply also south of the Alps. And that means all change is now in Europe. For Switzerland, we have no fossil electricity production, but we are in the middle of that. For that, we have also the same discussions. What should we do? Not only gas is no more profitable production, but also our hydropower production has problems, and also our nuclear production. That means we have in Switzerland about 60% hydro, and about 40% we have nuclear. And we think in the next years it's necessary to invest also in hydropower. The second big issue for us is the grid. We have to invest in our grid. And the third one, we need in Europe more storage. As Dr. Tyson said, on the other side, it's a big change. Consumers now are coming more and more to a critical point. They want to decide, they want to invest, they do more or less all that they can do on their roof, their photovoltaic panels, and use their own energy. And that is a new business model also for our electricity companies. A lot to do in the next 10, 15 years. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stermann. Now, I will ask one question each to the colleagues here, but afterwards I will come to the floor. If you have questions for our panelists about their companies, about the European or American or global energy system, or how they view the Turkish electricity sector, energy sector, please do so after this round, and you may want to give a thought in the meantime. So, Gerard, you mentioned some hopes in Europe in terms of electricity markets. What kind of hopes you see that we can fix these rather grave problems we have in the European electricity sector?
Well, first of all, I would like to observe that there is a dramatic shift, but I would say perhaps a positive shift in the nature of the energy system in Europe. We're shifting from what I would call the old world, which was issued from the X period where Europe was a juxtaposition of monopolies. The system were using bigger and bigger power plants with high voltage grid, centralized systems. This world is over, and we are shifting now to a new world with more decentralized energy, more energy efficiency, with the use of digital equipments and the convergence between digital and energy technologies, and all in all also a decline in energy consumption. Since 2008 in Europe, when there is zero economic growth, you have a decline by 1, 2, or 3% of the volume of the energy consumed. But there is also a change in the consumer behavior. Consumers want to manage their energy and even want to produce their energy. And so less energy consumed, sometimes produced and consumed by the consumer itself. So this will dramatically change the volume of energy exchanged in the grids, in the external grids. Now, this is what I would call a positive. And by the way, GDS Suez, who used to have also big plants that we have depreciated massively, we want to be an energy leader in the energy transition in Europe by renewables, by energy efficiency, and new digital businesses. Now, the hopes, nevertheless, we have to cope with the dramatic situation I was just mentioning during my first speech. The hopes is that Europe, some European executives and chief of states began to be aware of the dramatic situation. And I would take simply the example of the new package that has been proposed by the Commission. It tries first to restore a carbon signal which had disappeared because of the collapse of the ETS market so far. And we the utilities, we support even an ambitious but realistic target of minus 40% in 2030 for the CO2 emissions, with a signal sent by the carbon price, and if possible only by the carbon price. So they have approved and recommended this minus 40%. And secondly, as Johannes said, we consider that subsidies have to be eliminated as rapidly as possible. By the way, you have to know that it's not always the case when a sector which has been hit by transformation is asking to public sector, please, we don't want subsidy. We want you to stop the subsidies you are distributing to our sector when we invest in renewables. Please limit the subsidy to research and new technologies, but not for mature technologies. The market has to do so. And by forbidding the feed-in tariff system, which has been at the origin of the overcapacities of renewables in Germany, Italy, Spain, for example, the European Commission make a step in the right direction. It's not enough, all that is not enough, especially because in the capacity markets, capacity remuneration mechanisms, not enough progress has been made so far. But nevertheless, there are signs that the cost of the transition, as it had been envisaged by the previous governments and previous commissions, the cost of this transition was too high and leading to huge disturbation of the system. So I've been very critical on the previous situation, but I see some signs of improvement.
Thank you very much. Very encouraging. When we talk about the improvement and the good news, perhaps, Joe, with you, we can turn to Turkish energy markets. So how do you see the Turkish energy markets? And for Siemens, one of the global technology providers, we are one of the main companies in Turkey in that category. What does Turkey mean for you? In the morning, you were not here, Mr. Minister. They identified Turkey as a major energy demand growth center when compared to Europe. Gerard mentioned that demand is more or less flat in Europe, but in Turkey growing very strongly. What does Turkey mean for Siemens? And how do you assess the Turkish energy markets?
Well, first of all, Turkey means a lot to us in many aspects. We've been here for many, many years, and we've seen this country growing and developing. It's been driven by entrepreneurial families who have had a long-term view of what needs to be done to develop the economy. That always helps. There's nothing better than an ownership culture, because that's always long-term views, sustainable views. So that's already a very good thing to get matters done. And you also believe that the government has been very smart and supportive on setting the right stages, you know, to have those entrepreneurs do the right thing. And if you look at the current environment, I mean, Turkey has how many? 80, 90 million people?
A bit less than that, 73, 74.
Might soon have 80 to 90.
Yes.
But even 70, you know.
If you take the Turks in Germany and everywhere, we are almost there. So,
so what that basically means is that, you know, energy is driven by demand, and demand is people. So it is about demographics and industrialization. So I think it's been a very well thought through concept. If you see what has been done, you know, to have this energy mix of nuclear power plants, of gas turbines, starting the renewables now, especially on wind, a little bit solar. So it's quite a decent mix. But I do agree with the notion which Gerard also mentioned, never make investment based on subsidy. Because at some point in time, this is going to bite the one who does the capex and not takes away the subsidy. So that's why this is important. So all in all, I just can congratulate the country for a well thought through energy policy. But then, you always, if you talk energy, we always are tempted to talk about generation. But if you really look at it, if you really look at what does make the difference in the end, and the difference in the end is the energy management. How do we manage energy? How do we get energy from the source to the consumption? How does that work? How can we put efficiency to that? Make the cost of energy cheaper, not just by cheaper cost of generation. And this is a lot of things which come together. In former times, there was a big power plant, 1,100 megawatts or something, one big cable on transmission, then a substation, and then we went to the curb, to the homes, to the industrial buildings, and to the commercial buildings, right? Nowadays, there are multiple sources. It's solar, it's wind, it's nuclear, it's gas, it's coal, everything. So someone's got to manage that availability, bring it to the grid in an efficient way and not make the grid collapse. So make it reliable, affordable, and sustainable, all together in one. And that's what we call energy management. That's about decentralized energy. And that's also about managing it, smart grid. And then the digitalization topic comes in. How do we make sure that we get the best out of data? Best out of data. Our high-efficiency gas turbine, the 8000 H-frame, it's got 1,500 sensors, 1,500 sensors. And every sensor literally has a story to tell, data. And with that data, we can manage the efficiency. So digitalization will change the world also in energy. And that's something there's nothing worse than an unrequested advice. But that's what I would really, the Turkish industry has to consider. Think not just generation, think about energy management, which brings it from the source to the demand. And this is where I believe growth happens. This is where smartness gets applied to, and this is where money can be well invested.
Thank you very much. Now, Johannes, in a few days of time, there is a very important meeting in Brussels. The leaders of the many important countries will come in Europe and discuss about the energy situation. What would you expect from them? What kind of guidance? We say today, I mean, if I may use this expression, especially for thermal capacity, European electricity sector is uninvestable. I don't know if you agree with that, first of all, or not. Second, if you agree, what would we expect from the European leaders to do? What are the concrete suggestions to them?
Yeah. If I may, just to show what the world is developing, Joe just spoke about energy management. Germany today has 80 gigawatt of installed renewable capacity. That's precisely our peak load in the country, plus another 100 gigawatt of dispatchable capacity. And within hours, the energy in our capacity peaks and falls. I would have said a few years ago, we would have not dreamt that we'd be capable of mastering even that situation technically wise. Our people are living up to the equation. So I would say, when challenges come, solutions arise sometimes and capabilities get delivered. Therefore, there is something to harvest from, and there is experience and big data developing from that probably might be utilized not just like in Europe where it's a problem, it could be also a solution. And transferring that, let's say, to Turkey and things can be something very significant. I share also, some reluctant optimism that Gerard had. And I think, you need to have it. That's our continent we are coming from. You just cannot give up, so you need to hope that they get their act together. But I would not expect too much from the upcoming summit. Most of the decisions have been delayed to a summit in October. This summit will focus more, let's say, on Ukraine security of supply, which I sometimes think is a bit oversold. I saw some of the numbers here also in the morning. On average, for example, Russian gas just has 5% of European power production is influenced by Russian gas molecules. So I would say, one should not oversell the thing and now say we can change all strategies now towards whatever gas strategies or independent strategies. I think that's overselling it. There is an issue to be tackled, but keep your cool. And energy strategy is more than mastering the Ukraine crisis. There will be other crises coming and going whilst the energy equation is still under work. Therefore, I expect and hope more for the October, and there, admittedly, I will hope that they embrace a single target strategy, because if you have multiple targets, you run in multiple directions and you get nowhere. If you run with half speed back and half speed forward, you can rather stand. And that's what we did in the past. So a single CO2 target would be what we're dreaming of. A more ambitious integration of the renewables into the market. I think they can deliver much more than they are delivering today, but they don't need to right now. We have in most European countries a strategy that says invest and forget. You dump your renewable electrons in the grid and someone else can live up to the equation. I think if you challenge them, they will also find their solutions. So integrate them with all usual dispatch obligations and make them part of the solution and not just make them part of a problem. Then capacity markets, because customers need two things, clean electrons and they need to be certain that they can watch the soccer game at night or run their business at any given time of day or evening. Then I think one thing that should not be forgotten. A big difference of American and European power prices is just one thing, TAX, tax. It has not even anything to do with energy policies, it's just tax. On average, Europe has 2.5 cents on every kilowatt hours for household energy on subsidy and policy thing, and 3.9 cents just pure tax. And if we are uncompetitive, what I'm afraid we are moving to, the first thing you need to do, you need to remove the tax from this side. As we did in the past, we made labor cheap, so labor wouldn't disappear all to Asia. We liberalized labor markets and made labor more competitive. Right now, we just have to start to make energy more competitive, and that is better technologies, better market integration, and lower taxes. And then I would say the jury is still out if Europe cannot make it. I think a smart combination of renewables with dispatchable power still can be a competitive thing, but not if you do it inefficiently with high taxes and unaccountability of investors. So these are the things that we have to expect that they get tackled from now on to October and beyond. But after European elections and everything, who knows what European Parliament will do? Who knows what commissioner will direct it? But I also would remember, Germany was labeled by The Economist, I think it was 2002, the sick man of Europe or something. 2002. Well, we are still alive. And right now, European bashing is also the tone of the day. I would also say don't call off Europe too early. Yes, energy policy has not been the most supportive strategy lately, but it doesn't say that you cannot correct. And I will keep my optimism up. When problems are gloomy, sometimes politicians live up to the equation. And don't forget, we have all elected them, right? So, don't bash them. We elected them.
It means you are with a 40% CO2 reduction target. If it comes like that, you are happy with that one single target. It is something that you would like to see. Okay. Now, let me move to a topic that is not very much discussed, but at the heart of the interest of Turkey, which is the nuclear energy. So this is a key topic for the Turkish energy debate. And there are two examples, a US example and Swiss example from different angles. Perhaps I can start with Melanie. You have a lot of now shale gas, as you have seen a push for renewables. Is there a role for nuclear you see in the US electricity markets?
Well, as somebody mentioned, President Obama does have an all-of-the-above energy strategy. Nuclear is certainly a piece of that. I would be lying if I said that low-cost gas hasn't hurt the economics of nuclear. It certainly has. It is affecting retirement decisions. You might see early retirements because of low-cost gas, but that's economics, and it will be what it will be. Low-cost gas is also affecting coal generation, and it's affecting renewables generation, quite frankly, in the U.S. because it's very inexpensive. Gas and the gas generation is less capital intensive as well. So, having said that, we are building 2 new plants, 4 new units, 2 in South Carolina, 2 in Georgia. The one in Georgia it has been assisted through the U.S. Loan Guarantee Program run out of the Department of Energy, and the schedule and performance of those 2 plants will send a lot of signals to the marketplace about the future of nuclear. So we are watching that closely. Another issue that has been a perennial one, I work at the Department of Energy now. I worked there for 8 years in the Clinton administration as well. Disposal of nuclear waste remains a problem. It's not my area of expertise, so I won't go into any details because I will surely get them wrong. But everyone who is paying attention to nuclear, who is supportive of nuclear for a range of reasons, including diversity of our energy mix and climate change, a lot of no CO2 emissions, so there is support from that perspective, knows that we have to come to some kind of resolution of our nuclear waste disposal issue. The Secretary spends a lot of time on that, working on that issue. And then finally, I would say that we do have invested in R&D in small modular reactors. We just put out an award on that. I think we now have 2 awards out there. And the hope for a small modular reactor is cost reduction from a couple of perspectives. 1, the modularity of them, and 2, the lower capital costs that would be required for them. And so that's we're looking at a 2022 timeframe to see how that works out, and are just in kind of a wait-and-see mode on that. So we do see a future for nuclear. That's why we're putting supporting the plant with loan guarantees, and let's see how they perform. But it's the first nuclear plants built in the U.S. in a long time. So.
Thank you very much. So a very different situation than in the Germany, for example. U.S. is a completely different picture. So I will come to Mr. Steinmann. After Mr. Steinmann, I will come to the floor. If you have any questions with our colleagues, we will take them. Now, Mr. Steinmann, we have the Germany phase out of nuclear, U.S. pushing up nuclear, not perhaps a big way, but some new units are coming in the picture. And Switzerland is somewhere in the between, may I say so? Or how would you describe the Swiss position there in terms of nuclear?
Okay, the Swiss position is very much connected with popular vote. After March 11 Fukushima, we decided that we will not have new nuclear power stations in the next years. because every power station, every new one, must go into a national vote. And to find a majority is not easy. We had 1 month before, on a council level, a decision about a new nuclear power station, and it was 51 for the new power station and 49 against. For that means we have to wait. Second, we say the existing power plants can produce as long as they are safe. And safety is not a political issue. So we have not an end of lifetime decided by the policy sector like in Germany, but by our Nuclear Safety Inspectorate. And we think the last of our nuclear power stations could go out between 2030 and 2040. But it's a decision of engineers of Inspectorate. For that, we have enough time to look if we find other solutions for security of supply. First of all, reduce energy consumption, more energy, electricity, efficiency. And second, let's do what we can do in the renewable sector. Produce more renewables. And third, we are in the center of Europe. We are interested to cooperate with our neighbors to bring our hydropower, also for storage and so on, to the other countries, and also to import. And I think security of supply is no more in Europe a national issue, it's an issue of the whole European continent. For that, we think that we need enough grid integration and cooperation, and we are against national capacity markets because these are new subsidies, there's new frontiers, and are against integration. We try to negotiate with European Union also to have good condition for the integration of Switzerland in this existing European electricity market, because we think we should be part of that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Now, I would like to go to floor. There are a couple of questions. Why don't we start with you, sir, and then to Nabil. Yes, please.
All right. Thank you very much. My name is Birks Movahedi. Actually was the contract administrator in Los Angeles, California Energy Department over there, LIDWP, the largest utility in America. And I guess since we have a very limited time, I would really present other side of the story of the American utilities over there. There are some myths about American utilities, how we shop over there, our shopping habits and everything. I would like to, with all due respect, attempt to disagree with quite a few points about American market here. As my fellow American lady from public office perfectly put it, the supply chain actually in America is very diversified. It's not that we have a very conservative kind of vendor list that we purchase from certain companies. Not at all. Only for your info, a couple of years ago, in all America, all across the nation, 63% of all the power transformers that we purchased were from Korea. And later on, because of some anti-dumping policy and everything, there was a gap. It's a long story. And it's a huge now investment kind of gap for foreign manufacturers. And all these years, I can tell you that as a previously public officer in LIDWP, many bids used to come to me from first time. You could hear their names or brands for the first time in the American market, and we were totally okay. The other thing is that actually regarding the consumption in America is it's flat or declining because efficiency is getting better, especially in California. We have this kind of smart grid and different kind of things. But I would highly, highly recommend any manufacturers from Turkey, they're more than welcome to invest over there. It's a beautiful opportunity. It's easier than most parts of the world to invest in America. Thank you very much.
So you have no question, you have an advertisement.
No, I disagreed.
Nabil, would you like to go? Let's go. This gentleman over there.
Thank you. My question is for the panel. My question is, given that France's apparent success over the last 50 years to generate around 70% of its electricity from nuclear power, without, as far as we know, any serious accidents, why hasn't the French model been adopted by the rest of Europe? In other words, why hasn't been their extensive investment? Do they know something we don't know? Have there been accidents that have been not reported? I'm saying this in a half-joking way. The other thing is, it appears that the Gulf countries, the Gulf oil exporting countries, are planning to adopt nuclear. Are they making a mistake? Thank you.
Gerard?
You know the decision in France to use massively the nuclear the power generation technology has been taken just after the first crisis in the Middle East. And this has assured France with supply of electricity for many years. 75% come from nuclear. You know, it's quite difficult because we know also the Belgian part. GDF Suez is a French company, but we own and operate the 7 nuclear plants of Belgium. And even in Belgium, the strategy is different because the government of Belgium has decided to exit after, in principle, 40 years of life of the nuclear plants and 50 for 1 reactors. I personally consider that the nuclear technology has a room to supply in an energy system for base load electricity for a certain percentage. You know, in the world, the percentage of the electricity produced is 15% in average. 75 is not optimal because you do not absorb the flexibility of the consumption, the variations of the consumption. So the optimal percentage is perhaps some in between. But you have to be aware of the fact that it is today more and more difficult to build new nuclear plants in continental Europe. And so far, the only country in Europe where it is possible is UK, United Kingdom, and Finland. You are right, and Finland, yes, with one in construction and another one envisaged. But for Turkey, I consider that it is a good choice. It is the right choice because Turkey needs an appropriate energy mix. Turkey has gas-fired power plants. By the way, we have 2 plants in Turkey. Turkey has coal plants, renewables, hydro, and now wants to complete its fleet of production with 2 sites, one with the Russians and the Sinop site, where we have the honor to be with our Japanese partners to build 4 reactors, ATMEA reactors, designed by Mitsubishi and Areva. And I think it's, and we will be the operator of the plants. I consider that it's appropriate because Turkey has a growing demand of energy, and to supply its base load production, the level under which the consumption never goes, nuclear provides the long-term visibility on cost of production. It's not a cheap production, but in the long run it is stable. And since a decision taken now, it will take 10 years for construction and 60 years. So you will have a good visibility relatively good visibility on the cost of the electricity production between the year 2025 and 2085. And there are not many technologies able to do that. The only one is hydro. So I consider that it's an appropriate choice for the Turkish government and perhaps soon by the parliament to have selected the nuclear plants.
I think from a German side, one needs to add, obviously, one needs to respect the decisions like from people like in England or Turkey or elsewhere to take that choice. Germany has a tendency, since it overwhelmingly believes the other way, everybody else needs to believe the other way. I think it's a choice of every nation to take. I think in the end, the challenge of nuclear will likely not be policy or social acceptance. That is also important. I think it will be in the end costs and project complexity. And it is not cheap, as Gérard said. If you see the agreement now that EDF made in the United Kingdom with the British government, locking in prices on £100 plus a megawatt hour, plus some inflation, is, if you look cheap gas in the United States and believe in shale gas, maybe elsewhere, or even if you see and look on some renewables in a combination with shale gas, is a bet. You can be right, you can be wrong, who knows. But the second one that I would be personally at least have high respect for is project delivery. If you see the delays in Finland, Olkiluoto, if you see the delays that at least are sensible from the outside in France, one needs to see, and I see also the competence of the vendors in delivering just high maintenance or upgrade projects. Admittedly, shall I tell you the truth, it's a pure disaster. In Finland and Sweden and elsewhere, the vendors prove to be with limited competence to just deliver upgrades and major upgrade projects and maintenance projects to bring them to modern technology. Not saying that they are bad organizations, but it appears to be so complex and so difficult that none of the projects is even in visibility of its original timeline or capex budget. And I think that is something that one needs to see. And therefore, if you ask me, I believe we will only see new nuclear if it's governmental sponsored. Admittedly, Finland looks a bit different, but I have not seen all these reactors yet. I would believe only if a government, the United Kingdom or Turkey, signs up and guarantees the takeoff and the price and the final resolution on storage, only then you will see new nuclear anywhere in the world. I would bet a lot of money against anybody willing to bet with me that we will not see a single commercial merchant reactor being developed anywhere in the world. And that is quite different from 30 years ago. And that likely answers also your question, why don't we see more of it? Because not a single private company will run a project if it's not governmental sponsored or rate case based, which is the same. You need someone, a sovereign, to take all risk. And then you are left with project risk, and I would say that leftover is already significant. And I admire Gérard to be brave enough, and some others, to run it. And I think we will all follow that over time, how well it runs. I think Joe and his organization have shown some reluctance in delivering full EPC responsibility on that end after some experiences made in the past. But let's wait and see. The jury is with all like technologies, it's out. Just cost of capital will be enormous on nuclear. That's all. If someone pays the cost of capital, and if the national solution calls for some independence and some diversification, it's a valid technology. Why not?
Okay, thanks a lot. Other questions? Yes, sir. And there are two questions. One, and let's get two of them. Yes, sir.
Hi, everyone. Hakan Ergit with Accenture Consulting. Actually, Fatih, I'm going to ask you to help me with this question, because about 6 months ago in the Sabancı Center, when you talked about the World Energy Outlook report, you had a phrase saying that Turkey will not have the opportunity again that it has in the next 5 years. We will not have another 5 year like this. Maybe could you please help me to share those details? And I'm really curious about, what the big investors here like Siemens and GDF Suez think about what those reasons are. Thank
Perfect. I can tell this, I ask the views of the investors here, but there's other question back there. Let me take that one. Yes, sir.
Hi, Shahzad Abadi from Thales. Thank you very much. It's been very interesting, and it's great to have such a great panel here. It's probably the only time I'll be able to ask this question. Don't you think that the European directive has been a complete failure? So far, you've all complained about how badly it's actually managed the market. Everything seems to be taxes. We thought it was all renewables. We're now finding out that actually the UK government's paying subsidies out to EDF at in excess of £100 a megawatt hour. And this seems to be down to, instead of promoting more competition, we've now got EDF, RWE, E.ON, almost state-sponsored acquisitions around the whole of the European Union. And now the same collusion of governments is pushing this into the Eastern European markets to say to them, break up your companies, allow us to go and acquire them. And you're trying to sell the same thing to Turkey. It just seems like it's going to end up in more taxes, higher costs. The UK has experienced 10% rises in a declining electricity market. All the utilities have raised their prices apart, I think, from EDF.
Okay, thank you very much. Who would like to pick up this question? Started with, is European directive is a failure, starting from that, and I will come to the 5-year story later on. Johannes, would you like to start with that? Is European directive is a failure? Maybe.
Well, probably too early to do the final call. Germans have a tendency to congratulating themselves in the beginning of a race to the win.
We are together, Turks say as well.
I would not do that for the energy vendor, but also declaring bankruptcy yet is also a bit too early. I would say yes. If I look on Germany, we have wasted a triple-digit number, billions of euro on wrong starts. Yes. The only good thing is that the nation is pretty rich, and we have wasted similar amounts on probably the health system and some other systems as well. And therefore, we need to get our act together now. We cannot continue just, driving on the wrong side of the street and hope that suddenly the other, drivers change course. But I still have some hopes left, as I always say, that change is possible, but it comes with a huge macroeconomic impairment. That will have to be taken, if it's not even taken already.
Dr. Steinmann?
I think from Swiss side here, first of all, they started with good ideas. Second, they had some problems with the realization of the programs. Third, it's important to see what happened in the last months from the commissioner responsible for competition, Almunia. He made a lot of efforts to have really also competition in the renewable energy, and also that it's not possible to exclude energy-intensive companies from paying taxes for renewables. And third, they made also criteria for the introduction of capacity market. That means it can come now to a real European market for electricity, and that's a good thing. But I'm also sure that it needs to discuss more and look into the targets of 2030. I agree with Dr. Tyson, we should not have too many different targets. And it should be, first of all, oriented to a reduction of CO2, and it's necessary that not every European country has a target for renewables, because it's better to produce photovoltaics energy in Spain than in northern Germany.
Okay. Joe, you want to say something on that?
Yeah, I think what Johannes said is right. It's too early to tell whether or not it has been a failure, but even assuming it had been a failure, just assuming like this, wouldn't it be our responsibilities as industrial leaders, as leaders who are here in this room, to speak up and show people the way? Isn't that what we should learn out of it? Who has spoken up in Germany when they decided to go, to rush off the nuclear energy, except the ones who've been affected? No one did. No one did. And I myself, think about it. Shouldn't Siemens have been speaking up and tell people the facts and make them more rational about the change? There's nothing wrong with a society changing its energy model, because it's about responsibility of a civilized nation. It's not so much about the residual risk of nuclear power that it blows off. It's more about, should we leave our next 100 generations waste behind which they cannot have access to? 23,000 years of the most poisonable residuals. So that would be the question of a modern society. But if that question is being answered, it's got to have a meaningful way of change, which didn't in Germany. So the point is, what I want to make is, even if it was a failure, then we would have the responsibility to show our society the way on how it's been done better in the next time. And that's about innovation, and that's about leadership, and that's about facts in the end. And I believe this is what we should go after.
Melanie, we had a meeting here six months ago, and one of the things we said is that looking at Turkey and looking at some of the neighbors of Turkey, such as Iraq, North Iraq, South Iraq, East Mediterranean, lots of oil gas deposits, and they are looking for outlets to how to transfer to the oil and gas to the main markets. And in that meeting, we thought that in the next 4 or 5 years, if Turkey provides good projects, solid projects, which helps the stability of those countries and economically sound projects, Turkey can benefit and improve the regional security of supply in the very region. In one of your slides was very telling, showing all the energy deposits around Turkey and in East Mediterranean and also other Middle East countries. What are your thoughts? Do you see that Turkey can play a role of an energy hub, looking at all these countries around Turkey with new or established resource holders?
Are you asking me a geopolitical question?
Whatever you prefer. You know Turkey, you love Turkey, Turkey loves you, so you can say.
I do, and when I did that, I was not a member of the Obama administration when I did that analysis before. I do think that Turkey plays a strategic role in this region, a stabilizing role, and I was missing from my slides. I don't know why. I did have a slide on the Southern Corridor. I think that is an essential project for going forward. I think that development of Eastern Mediterranean gas, while it is extremely complicated geopolitically to get that done, if done, could provide another stabilizing institution for that region of the world, and so I think that Turkey would play an essential role there as well, and let's just leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks a lot for this encouraging.
I'm glad you asked me that question because I felt like a house guest and the family was having a fight before, so.
Wonderful. Okay, what else? What else? Who has some more questions for our panel members? What questions? I would like to ask one question, if I may, to Gerard. Now, one of the main debates in Europe is, I'm looking at your gas business. So we are using gas. It is very good. We get mainly from one major exporters. But we would like to also, through LNG, diversify our gas resources. Do you see real concrete chances to increase the role of LNG in the European gas markets without harming the economic conditions that the LNG prices could compete with the pipe gas or other energy sources? Do you see a greater role of LNG in European markets?
First of all, I consider in general that LNG will take a growing share of the natural gas market, in natural gas taking itself a growing share in the energy mix, world energy mix. So LNG has clearly a brilliant future. Now for Europe. Europe has been using LNG for many years. And between Algeria and France, Spain and Belgium, the LNG supply is existing still today and has been existing for more than 30 years, working well. So already today, LNG is a part of the supply of Southern Europe, including France and Belgium and UK also. But the growth of the demand from Asia is such that a significant part of the LNG usually dedicated to Europe is reoriented to Asia. And today, in the terminals existing in Spain, in France, even in Belgium, the percentage of use of the terminal is much below 50%. Yeah. Because the consumption of natural gas is declining, and a part of the LNG is rerouted to Asia, where the prices, as you know, are close to double the price of the natural gas in Europe. So technically, it will be possible if there was an important restriction, reduction or interruption of the supply of natural gas to Europe from pipe gas from Russia, it is technically possible to have additional quantities of LNG coming from everywhere in the world where there are production, and perhaps tomorrow from US. Perhaps tomorrow from US. By the way, we are with our partners of Sempra Energy building a big, it was a $12 billion project in Cameroon with 3 trains, one for us, one for Mitsui, and one for Mitsubishi. But normally this gas is dedicated to Asia, because when you fill a ship with gas, if you go to Europe, you will sell it at 9 or 10 euros, and if you go to Asia, the same ship, you will sell it at 16, 17, 18 US dollars, sorry. So today, the economics are there. But if there would be a physical crisis, additional LNG could come to Europe, but there will be an additional cost. That's clear.
Johannes, you want to add something?
Can I disturb the debate a bit with, we're debating a lot where we get the gas from and how we get it here. If we continue to decide not to use it, what's the issue? In heating, it's more displaced in new buildings. It's more with low energy houses. It's much cheaper to have electricity as a heating source with heat pumps. If I look on the whole of Scandinavia, it's central heating. There's no gas left in that market. And in power generation, Gerard rightfully said we are closing 50 gigawatt of gas-fired generation. And once that is gone for good, there is no place to burn it or to change from coal to gas. I think we would have to decide, first of all, also that we want to utilize gas as a low-carbon energy source. And then we can return to the debate how we source it and how we pump it and bring it. Right now, as we see a tendency, I think we lost 10% consumption already. In new buildings in Germany, I think it has significantly less than 50% of market share. In urbanization situations, I think central heating systems built on waste usage and others will capture part of the cake. I would rather wonder, if there might not be a significant oversupply of gas in the world, then maybe not everywhere. One should be cautious with fundamental statements, but I wonder if gas age is also will not end because of end of gas.
We have a lot of gas.
But substitution. And therefore, I think Europe first needs to decide on fundamental policy. We have phased out nuclear and substituted it with renewables. Both were CO2-free, no change. And we substituted low-carbon gas with high-carbon coal. The average now is more expensive, less stable, and more dirty. So that is definitely not sustainable. But again, the question is, will we rebalance it? And to bring gas into the equation in Europe for power generation, I remember some fundamental truths that is not so easy to match. You would need double the coal price to shift from coal to gas, double the coal price, not likely, I don't see that tendency. Half the gas price, I don't see that either, because the American gas would come without shipping costs for that. Or you need 10 times the CO2 price. So we talk about 40 euro for carbon. I also don't see that. So we are talking maybe sometimes a theoretical debate. I'm not saying that gas should not be part of the solution. I think it should be. But we first need to get our act together in energy policy in making room for low-carbon energy again before the debate can refocus on are we certain on supply. I think right now I'm rather afraid that gas-fired power stations will continue to be closed. Gas storages will rather continue to be closed, not extended for security supply reasons, because as hydropower stations, they don't earn money. Pump storage doesn't earn money. So all these storage systems that theoretically are needed, market tells you, prices tells you, close them. And investors will at some point just continue to do so, because if nobody sponsors it. So yes, we need some different regulation, market design to keep, the ends of the game together before it derails. And then comes the question of how to source and where to source and whom to rely on. I'm not that afraid on Russia or anybody in this gas supply thing. I think there is likely enough gas and enough sources and ways to bring it to market, if it's needed, if it's competitive, and if regulation makes room for it. If not.
Of course, the European situation is not applicable to the rest of the world. Asia is a completely different story. I think we had the Canadian ambassador in the morning here who rightly said that Canada has to turn its direction to Europe or Asia for the exports, as the US wouldn't need much more new Canadian oil and gas. But Melanie, would you like to add something to this LNG discussion?
Yeah, and there were so many things that was just said that I can't comment on as a government official, but the 2 points. One, and I take the point about Germany not being overly concerned about security of gas supply. There are other countries that suffered fairly severely in dead of winter when they did not have natural gas for heat. We're not talking power generation. For heat was a huge issue, and so it depends on where you sit, how you view security of supply. on the situation in Crimea. It is not, energy security is a manifestation of a larger issue, which is disrespect for international law and national borders. Okay, so that was there are larger issues that were involved in the crisis that we were dealing with than only energy security. But the U.S. experience, fortunately, I wasn't doing energy policy then, but after we have had a tendency in the United States to get natural gas policy wrong. And after the oil embargo in 1973-74, it put a huge chilling effect on any new gas generation being built. In 1978, the United States, not having a good understanding of what was going on in the states and with regulation, outlawed the use of natural gas in power generation. And the year after we outlawed the use of natural gas in power generation, 3 Mile Island happened. And what you had, the combination of the oil embargo, the Fuel Use Act, which was the law that outlawed the use of natural gas in power generation, and 3 Mile Island was a huge opportunity for coal power generation. That's when it gained its market share in the United States. The Fuel Use Act was repealed in 1987. In that period of time, from 1978 to 1987, that's when you saw coal-fired power generation gain market share in the United States. We then, natural gas combined cycles came about then. There was a big rush to gas generation. The price went up, and we stopped. They sat fallow, a lot of unused capacity. And then we were going to import LNG. That's been, very recently that we were building import terminals into the United States to import LNG, and now we're getting ready to export it, kind of proving my point that we get gas policy wrong. We haven't had a good handle on gas policy. It's a tricky fuel because you use it in all the sectors. But it's also a cautionary tale about doing kind of the analysis that you need to do before you go make policies like we're going to shut down all of our nukes, or we're not going to do this, or we're not going to do that. That's what we're doing in the Quadrennial Energy Review in the United States, is trying to make policy recommendations that are grounded in some very, very sound analysis. And I think it's certainly important to the Secretary. It's important, I think, for the future of our energy policy in the U.S. And I think that we've had a lot of bad experiences when we didn't do that. So.
Thank you very much. I think it is exactly 4 o'clock. Plus, I should say one thing that I read recently, it is in terms of LNG, which is very surprising, at least I think so. United Arab Emirates applied the United States to buy LNG. An OPEC producing country applies, and years and years energy important country to import LNG. This is something shows us how the world markets change as a result of the recent developments. So with this, I would like to thank our very, very distinguished panelists, and I hope you join me to thank them sincerely. Thank you.